I adore this tale since it's up to date and genuinely happening right now. It seems that an old Egyptian relic is rotating on its own at a museum in Manchester, which is where I'm going. No one understands why. It's a mystery. Miss Marl Bradbury's journey has captivated our country, and the artifacts from Tutankhamun's tomb were displayed in London in 1972. An incredible 1.6 million people came to see them, which is when the rumors of "Hear My Home, Egyptian Curses" are all started. Thus, it's not surprising that everyone was captivated by this contemporary mystery in Manchester. Hi, I understand that you are an Egyptologist. Tell me more about this specific relic first. We recently discovered that this small statue, which is only about 10 inches high, had begun to move in its container. Curious, we set up a time-lapse camera to record it, and sure enough, we saw it move. I've kept myself for the B Show Me the Video C for a second. This is our time-lapse movie, which was shot over a week. It's fascinating to see how clear it is. 3 statuettes to the left are immobile. Why is it only him? Why? Well, let's return to the little statue itself. What does it represent? Where is it from? And what is its history? It belonged to a man named Neb-Uwu, who lived approximately 4,000 years ago. The hieroglyphic inscription on the back of the statue requests offerings for his spirit in the afterlife, and the ancient Egyptians thought that statuettes could be alternate residences for the soul, which is why they placed them in tombs and temples. I believe this speaks to the general public's imagination that such a thing truly satisfies our curiosity. All right, I've watched the video and we've talked about it. Now show me the mother. All right, this is the dude N.E., your N.E. The explanations range from the sublime to the absurd, but one person proposed that Michael Jackson's ghost was responsible for bringing this from beyond the grave, to the notion that I have my own theory, and it has nothing to do with Michael Jackson. It's No himself, the spirit of Nu attempting to attract attention. I'm hoping that Stephen Goling, an acoustician, can assist me unravel this riddle. Isn't that all very James Bond? A 3-axis sensor has been installed by Stephen. We are hoping to correlate the vibration measurements over a 24-hour period with the movement of the statue in this fairly solid room, which has a parquet wooden floor. The measurements were taken beneath the wall-mounted glass cabinet to record any vibrations in the room. Expect a lot of vibration across the floor. The cabinet naturally hangs off the wall, so you assume that has a big role in it. In my opinion, that's pretty important music. Before examining the data, we'll run the test for a full day. In the meantime, I've up a meeting with Egyptologist Joyce Tilsley to discuss our interest in ancient Egypt. We're virtually pre-wired to believe bizarre things about ancient Egypt, in my opinion. People have read about Tutankhamun, seen movies about her, and it's hard to shake the feeling that thousands and thousands of people are cursed there, have been interested in the survived, but we also like the notion that there might be something there, so we buy into it. Then we're taken back to our little rotating man. And all of these elements just came together, didn't they? And made this grand narrative out of a relatively small object? Yes, there is a strong desire to think that the Egyptians understood something that we don't, and that if you can study them thoroughly enough, you might be able to access it. Immerse yourself in something fantastical, and you never know what you might discover. Perhaps if you think that the ancients exist, you'll discover their secrets. The mysteries of ancient Egypt are indeed fascinating, but I don't think the spinning statue has any supernatural qualities. It's time to speak with Stephen, who has the vibration test findings. I left you in a void, Stephen, attempting to figure out why this statue has been spinning. Have you been successful? Yes, we have, and I'd like to show you some great data. This is the time-lapse movie with an overlay of the values of vibration. As you mentioned, the statue peaks at 6 o'clock in the evening and troughs out at night when it completely stops moving. It then begins to peak again at 6 or 7 in the morning. That's exactly right, and the vibration comes from a variety of sources, so there are buses outside. It's all of those things together. The foot traffic on the busy road, plus the movement of the cabinet is turning our small man around. That's exactly it. There are 4 statues in the cabinet. What is causing any of them to move? There is a lump at the bottom of this statue's convex base, which makes it more prone to vibration than the ones with flat footing. Is this conclusive? Yes. You can bet your life on it. Yes, Steve, we've figured out the secret of the tiny Egypt IP that rotates thanks to Steve and his vibration analyzer. Joyce informed me that one of the reasons this narrative gained so much traction was because we are deeply rooted in Egyptian culture. The next time you're out and about, keep an eye out for the obelisks, pyramids, sphinxes, and other structures that may be found all over the world. Music. Evidently, I've always enjoyed large-scale American science fiction films and comics, so not surprisingly, 30% of the young men surveyed claim to believe in UFOs and aliens. What's really intriguing, though, is that almost half of you stated that you thought the government had concealed the presence of extraterrestrial or paranormal activities at one point. Today, in East Anglia, an astounding 43% of individuals believe in aliens and UFOs, so I'm going to go investigate why the East Anglian county of Suffolk has a forest called Renam Forest, which encircles the airbase. Waters was bent by RAF, but it has since been abandoned. Utilized by the U.S. Air Force during the Cold War, and an American airman claims to have seen strange lights in the sky early on December 26, 1980. Soldiers ran into the forest to investigate, only to find what they thought was an alien spacecraft. We are going to the location where the UFO landed on the first night. Former Ministry of Defense official Nick Pope has taken me to the location where the spacecraft was allegedly found, that one of the witnesses drew this design of the UFO, and you know there's no middle ground with this. It's not like any ship I've ever seen, and there are no lights in the sky. Did anyone take any pictures? Many individuals say that pictures they're looking at the UFO and asking. But after a few minutes, this thing slowly starts to rise above the Earth. They were all informed, though, and the videos didn't come out. I'm not sure if this was me or if it was a cover-up. Suddenly, it speeds off to the horizon at an unbelievable rate, and one of the witnesses notes in his police notebook that it is impossible to reach speed 148. 2 nights later, we hear further stranger noises coming from the farmer's barnyard animal. When strange lights appeared in the forest this time, Colonel Charles Holt, the deputy base commander, sent a team of soldiers to investigate. Colonel Holt recorded this on tape, and the recording has survived. These are tough guys, a bunch of military men working together. When you listen to the tape, you can hear the anxiety and stress in those men's voices. There is no question about it, this is strange, and there are unquestionably 2 twos coming. Keep your flashlights off and notice something really weird that appears to be an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side, and we observe weird flashes that resemble strokes. Fairly irregular, but there's undoubtedly something extraordinary about it. It's so odd that you can clearly sense the strain, as Nick mentioned, particularly when the light, or whatever it is, appears to be moving toward them. A lot as well, making it seem quite genuine, and it's quite unsettling to sit here and listen to it in the trees of Renelin Forest in Suffolk. I'm looking into the enigma of the most well-known UFO incident in Britain, which occurred in 1980. American airmen stationed at RAF Bentwaters stated that, "Have you seen a UFO in the forest?" Lieutenant Colel Holtz recorded the event on audio because he was positive that something extraterrestrial was in the sky that night. The Randone Forest case is somewhat referred to as Britain's Roswell, and it's a really fascinating case flying over Chris. French, a psychology professor at Goldsmiths College, thinks there must be a logical explanation for the sightings, which we know happened at 3 a.m. on December 26, 1980. When they finally escaped, there was a really bright fireball and meteorite that was actually very far away. It was a meteorite, meaning that something was descending from space, but it didn't land in the forest. There was this weird flashing light, and it seems like they were actually looking at the Offord Nest Lighthouse. That's correct. They saw it through trees, so occasionally they would see it, and other times they wouldn't. I'm very disappointed that they thought it was a lighthouse. For the sake of heaven, they are in the army, they are shooting guns and flying planes, and they are unable to distinguish between a spaceship and a lighthouse. The lighthouse is only seen from specific locations within the forest. It is not truly visible from this place due to the land's LIE. In terms of the larger context, why do people want to think this sort of stuff? But I can totally understand why they would want to do that since, in essence, it would reveal a lot about our location. There are only two possibilities in the universe, really. Either we are alone, or we are not. If this were the case, why don't they just make a proper announcement and land on the White House lawn? We would be happy to have them as long as they don't eat us. Since there's no assurance that's the issue with these aliens, Chris was convinced that the meteor in the sky was what caused Lieutenant Colonel Holt and his soldiers to journey into the woodland, where they subsequently thought the Uranus lighthouse a few miles east of the forest was an extraterrestrial spacecraft. However, retired police investigator Constable Gary Hesseltine went back the way in 2011 with Lieutenant Colonel Holt, who was certain that it was not the lighthouse Colonel Holt, who used to escort tourists to see lighthouses, claimed it wasn't in any star. The lighthouse when they arrived and stayed with him, so he knew exactly where it was. However, based on all the evidence, Gary is wondering why Suffolk and ARA bent water when there shouldn't have been any nuclear weapons. But an extremely high-ranking officer has informed me that there were more nuclear weapons. Weapons at ARF bend waters than anywhere else in the United Kingdom. I was a police officer at 2 nuclear bases for the Royal Air Force, performing duties that were identical to those of these airmen. The aliens, UFOs, are interested because they have nuclear weapons here, and they have a belief in nuclear weaponry worldwide. You can definitely draw conclusions over 60, in my opinion. The only other concern with all these high-ranking witnesses is why they are all attempting to keep it secret. Why not tell us the truth? Years of investigation from all around the world have produced highly plausible allegations that UFOs are interested in what happens to humanity and nuclear weapons. I'm frequently asked this question because nobody wants to acknowledge that they don't control the airspace. I'm not sure of the exact solution, but I believe it has to do with the decline of music power. Whether it was an extraterrestrial plane, a meteor shower, or the lighthouse, I believe it's safe to say that there were some truly odd things happening here in 1980. Incredibly hard to decide, but one thing we can't overlook is Gary's claim that the airbase was hiding hidden nuclear weapons, which the aliens were interested in. I want to talk to the moderator to see what they think. Gary's hypothesis. People frequently associate UFOs with flying sources or alien abductions. However, at their most basic, a UFO observation is simply an unknown flying object. Thus, instead of pursuing aliens crossing a Mexican desert, the account of an item seen flying over the moors in Sheffield, where I grew up, caught my attention. On March 24, 1997, hundreds of witnesses reported seeing an incredibly fast object glide low over the Peak District near Sheffield. There was a huge explosion and a blinding flash of light when it vanished over the horizon. But what was it? And how could I begin my investigation without eyewitnesses? Taylor and Andy Granger. So Andy, I'm going to ask you to travel back in time. After 6 years, Andy tells me what? As you recall, I had just left work that day, and my friend Tony and I were both astonished and incredulous when we suddenly noticed a bright light streaking across the sky. It was really low, so we thought, cracking, what's that? We assumed it was some sort of UFO. You have a different memory of what we just saw, but you state that it was unquestionably an aircraft. I was a special constable in the town where I was driving, and it was quite obvious. As it vanished behind the sea, there was a loud beep, and I assumed the plane had gone down since it was all over the news that there had been an incident on the MS. At night, the front wheel was down and lit up, which is again really odd and not something you see very frequently. Believed that it may have had something to do with the fact that last night, following several reports of a low-flying aircraft and additional sightings of what seemed to be a blast. The Civil Aviation Authority has not received any reports of missing planes, but police are still searching. 3 helicopters and more than 200 personnel scouted a 40-square-mile area. Mike France, a mountain rescue INET controller, and Jack Clarkson, a retired police inspector, carried out the thorough search, but nothing was ever discovered. When did you notice that no additional calls were being received to confirm a missing aircraft? You know, no relatives, members, nobody was reporting any missing aircraft. What could be the reason for this? What are some of the odd notions that are being circulated? I believe a light aircraft transporting narcotics from Europe was being pursued by jets, that the sonic boom caused by the afterburners was most likely a tornado aircraft. To be clear, a sonic boom occurs when something breaks the sound barrier, therefore something caused that. The mod denied any information. At the time, the M-Mod published a report stating there was a sonic boom in the vicinity that they couldn't account for one of their military planes participating in a top-secret training operation, despite the prevailing noise conspiracy theories. Aircraft producing that sonic boom, but it may have been a natural occurrence brought on by a nearby satellite or space debris, so why not simply state that the pilot slightly depressed the throttle and was heading home? Hello? I'm doing well. How are you? The moderator would have breached the law by exceeding the sound barrier over land if it had been an RAF aircraft traveling supersonic. David Aronovich is a well-known Times columnist who has written a lot about conspiracy theories. I'm curious to get his thoughts on the theories surrounding the 1997 Phantom PL sighting. We like the notion that everything has a reason, but we also appreciate the notion that there are secret reasons why certain things happen in planes. Anticipated seeing it at an odd location. If the M knew that there had been a training exercise, why would they permit this extensive search that involving hundreds and hundreds of people? Sonic booms, etc., and suddenly you realize that it's an event. It must be the Royal Air Force hunting down and shooting down UFOs. Occur. For example, you're in the M-Mod when people start stating that you may have completed a training exercise, but then they start saying that they've witnessed a crash and a light that something has. What do you do now? Do you assume that whatever you were doing, which wasn't what they were seeing, was what they were seeing? Or do you say, well, it's just possible that something else is happening out there, maybe we better have the search? You obviously do the latter, but after you look back and realize what happened, it doesn't seem really innocent, and you sort of make it into a new narrative. Music. Although we have questioned the moderator regarding the theories proposed in each of our investigations, any official remarks that have already been made will be available in the National Music Archives. So both of us wind ourselves here after having entirely different stories in other regions of the nation. The National Archive, I must admit that I'm more perplexed now than I was when I first started, because every time I talked to someone, I just ended up with more questions. Nevertheless, we did receive a response from the moderator, and they stated that we never discussed the exact locations of nuclear weapons at any point in time, and they wouldn't tell us whether there was nuclear, whether or not there were weapons on the base. As you can clearly appreciate from my account of this amazing multi-sighting, there was a strong suspicion that it was a mod training exercise, and the mod must have been involved. Naturally, the mod was questioned about it. What do they say? This is the moderator's response. I can attest that there isn't any proof that the United Unauthorized Foreign Military Planes entered the Kingdom's airspace. And as you are aware, that is the mod's only worry over reports of unidentified flying objects. However, these sightings of UFOs also spike when major UFO films are released, as they have demonstrated. Men in black, when they appeared when they were near, come across the third kind. Remember that my aircraft encounter occurred around the same time as several high-profile airplane films, including Connor and Air Force One, were published, making it a major part of popular culture. These sightings and instances of this nature are cyclical. So how do you feel content? Has your desire for aliens been slaked? I feel like we've ended up in the archives. More like a librarian than a Jedi Knight. I'm excited to read through these papers. The UK has more ghost sightings than any other place in the world, which may be why 30% of you believe in them. However, where does that belief music originate? I've scheduled a meeting with Dr. Shane. Where did our belief in ghosts come from? McCartan, a cultural historian at the University of Cambridge, says that ghosts represent our bond with the deceased. Coincidentally, throughout history, the relationship has evolved. In medieval Christianity, the ghost is said to have come from purgatory, which is a sort of holding area where souls go after death. The purpose of purgatory is to provide information about the hereafter. Occurs in the 17th and 18th centuries, when they begin to genuinely examine ghosts as a result of the Reformation's reluctance to consider the idea of purgatory. Stories because they think the ghost shouldn't be there because it's either a demon or an angel. And this is where the British passion with ghost investigation comes from. Why do we talk to people about ghosts when they know it's not real, but yet want that experience? When discussing ghost stories by creating links between visitors and the locations they visit, you are essentially preserving your past, but you are also drawing on that kind of profound curiosity that, British people